Say, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of a horror game? If you answered furry pirates, well, first, I'd like to ask what the hell's wrong with you. But second, I'd say, gee, how did you know there really was a connection all along? You silly scallywag, you. You might not know them by name, but Monolith Productions and Techland are responsible for developing lots of iconic games that you've probably at least heard of before. RIP, guys. You WB Games, you radioactive waste dump. These guys were the masterminds behind horror staples like Fear, Condemned, Dead Island, and Dying Light. But every blockbuster studio must have their humble beginnings, and for some reason that's still beyond my understanding, they both happen to start things out with titles in the furry pirate genre. 2 with boob, 1 with no boob. A genre exclusively consisting of a grand total of 3 games that these guys made. Monolith made their own furry pirate game, Claw, way back in 1997, a 2D action platformer that was surprisingly exclusive to the PC. You aren't going to be playing this one on a console. Now, Claw is obscure enough in its own right, but Nikita is another story. Both of her games were seemingly only released in Europe, but this suffering American still really wanted to take a look at all 3 of these games because they simply fascinated me. I actually grew up with Claw. It was the first platforming game I ever played in my life when I was a teeny little 3-year-old fox pup. And now my parents wonder why I turned out to be a furry. When I discovered that there's more games related to the staple of my childhood, we'll delve more into how Claw and Nikita are related later, I just had to get my hands on these things. But when I finally decided that I wanted to make a video about these games, turns out that one of the titles is oh no. Lost media! Well, sort of. It was possible to download both of these games via Internet Archive, but it was kind of completely fucking useless when both games still required an original disc to launch at all. Not very helpful when the Nikita games are near impossible to acquire here on disc in the States. But then I remembered, I actually bought both of these games digitally years ago. That's right, there was an official English translation of both games, fully digital versions that could be launched and played without a disc. Turns out, I was the only person crazy enough to go out of her way back in like 2018 to buy these games digitally when they were very briefly available online. Eventually, I was able to dig into my storage unit, find my old ass PC, and I was able to recover the games and upload them to Internet Archive. Hooray! The lost medias were now found medias. Oh, what joyous day! I'm even credited on the Lost Media Wiki now, which is basically like winning an Oscar, but it's for finding a media. This unearthing of long lost, now easily accessible versions of these hyper obscure games did end up bringing some attention on social media, which is why I'm not alone to talk about them today.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game!
Stop that. I told you before you agreed to be on this project that this is a no MatPat reference household.
All right. Anyway, hi there. I'm Dove of the human variety from the Mistress Dove channel. My curiosity was piqued when I stumbled across Rennie's post about putting these games on Internet Archive, and somehow, I don't know how, that landed me a collab, so here I am.
I'm seriously so happy to have you here. Hope you're enjoying yourself in the indescribable void that is my YouTube channel.
Happy to be here. You know, it's nice to get out of the castle every once in a while. You know, touching grass, as the youngsters say.
Epic. So I know Nikita's the thing that brought you here in the first place. I can't blame you at all. Some dude at Techland was really cooking when it came to modeling all that pirate booty. Like, goddamn.
You know, if this game looked better graphically, she wouldn't be out of place standing next to Carmelita Fox in the Sly Trilogy. Like, wow, it's abundantly obvious where Techland's focus was.
Yeah, whew, seriously. Shit. I think we're getting a bit too excited and ahead of ourselves, Dove. We should probably talk about the first game in this bizarre furry pirate game sort of trilogy thing. The first one being Claw, or Captain Claw as some call it. You told me that you never heard of this game either, but you ended up giving it a try, right?
Oh yeah, I only learned about Claw because you told me that Nikita was originally developed as a sequel to it, and that got me curious. I wasn't expecting to find a genuinely fantastic action platformer, especially one with such a dedicated community in spite of its obscurity. It's thanks to that community that the game is super easy to actually play to this day on modern PCs.
Yeah, seriously, I respect this game's community so hard. Claw is basically abandonware at this point, and fans are the only reason you can get a playable version of the game running on modern Windows. What really kept the community going all these years later was the game's custom level editor, which is just nuts to see in a 2D platformer from the time. Claw may have very well been the first platforming game with this feature ever, and I think it deserves way more credit for giving players something this cool to mess around with almost 30 years ago. You could even share levels with other players on ye old ancient dial-up internet that beeped really loud and shit.
So it's a search engine, right? Can we look at it? No.
Sorry, Nintendo, but I think Monolith beat you to the punch on this one.
That fucking bird that I hate. That fucking bird that I hate. That fucking bird that I hate.
You know, I'm proud of you for not playing the dial-up noise as a joke in that sentence. I know that took a lot of self-control.
Claw is a 2D platformer, which really comes to its benefit with just how well the game has held up over the years. It's tough as nails, don't get me wrong, hell I could barely even beat the second level as a kid, but solid level design and really tight controls make for a really damn fun action platformer. It's a real shame this game didn't do better commercially. Barely anyone bought it, and now it's like $100 on eBay for an original.
As a very recent fan of the game, one thing that immediately stuck out to me was how everything in the levels flowed well into one another. I know that's kind of an obvious thing for a platformer with a level-by-level structure to get right, but considering how well I feel Claw is designed overall, it's worth at least spotlighting with words.
Oh, totally. For a PC-only 2D platformer that probably had a shoestring budget, I really gotta respect the attention to detail. The devs put a lot of thought into the environment of each level, as well as all the characters. Almost every character has some sort of history with the captain that's brought up in the game's shockingly well-animated cutscenes, and the game even features full voice acting. Now, as many know, voice acting was pretty rough for video games back then.
Screaming! It came from the bad alley.
So getting some voice acting in this game that is overall solid, but just maybe a little corny, is genuinely great.
I'm telling you, it's true.
Oh, come on, how can you say that?
Claw's voice really sells that he's been in the pirate game for quite a long time. And there's some other great voices too, like this guy named Leroy. He just serves so much for no reason, and I love it.
This is indeed a rare treat. Captain Nathaniel J. Claw.
In general, Claw's presentation is pretty great. Characters, while not being super deep or anything, are entertaining and are usually pretty memorable overall. Claw's VA, Stephen White, gives the captain a very good, experienced pirate voice, like Rennie said, but it's also pretty unique for a captain such as himself, rather than the stereotypical pirate voice.
A drawing of the amulet. Now to finally escape from this prison and collect all of the 9 gems.
I wouldn't expect any less from Caleb of Blood fame, though. Dude's voice in general is pretty iconic. Hey Rennie, did you also know Stephen White was Big Top from Mario Party 8? I bet you didn't.
I sure didn't. Guess that guy was a bigger part of my childhood than I realized, so that's cool. Claw has some killer character design too. Claw himself manages to look like a badass while keeping a pretty average build. They didn't have to make him a huge muscle butt guy to make him look awesome when fighting and jumping around. And while the cutscene animation is impressive, it does have some flaws here and there, like this awkward scene with Claw's crew swinging from ship to ship. But I'm personally willing to forgive any of these problems when the game gave us some legitimately well-designed hot furry ladies, including a BBW? Oh, designers after my own heart. The artists really cooked in all categories and everything looks good in cutscene and in game.
Claw has such great presentation overall. You can tell that the people at Monolith really did care about this game down to the smallest of details.
This game has a lot to like, but it isn't flawless. Like, it's annoying as hell that lives don't reset when you game over, even when you load back from a save, which causes a lot of unnecessary frustration. And level 10. Most of the levels are great, but level 10. It's the only level filled with bullshit traps everywhere and enemy placement, along with an equally awful boss. I fucking hate this bird. You gotta shoot at the right time, but it's off screen. You have to shoot the fucking bird when it's off screen. You can't fucking see it correctly. Fuck! You're gonna be seeing this surprisingly gruesome death animation a whole lot.
I was honestly surprised the game had proper controller support, and it feels good to control that way too. I don't have many gripes myself outside of stuff Rennie's already brought up though.
Other than those little problems, Claw is an awesome swashbuckling adventure of a platformer that's so worth playing. The exciting music, surprisingly intense combat despite its simplicity, and really fun power-ups add so much to the experience. And it's completely free to download legally since it's abandonware. I'll drop a link to download it in the description. Please check it out. It's better than Skull and Bones. You probably forgot that even existed until right now.
Why did you feel the need to remind people of Skull and Bones?
I just want my lovely audience to suffer.
You know what? Doesn't matter. Moving swiftly right along, we have Nikita, the Mystery of the Hidden Treasure, developed by Techland originally as their take on the concept of a 3D claw once Monolith abandoned the idea. Techland would eventually lose the IP, however, and would have to scrub off and edit any licensed material from the game, not unlike that one time in Ultimate Spider-Man, the comic, not the terrible TV show, where they originally referenced the Raimi films, but then later Prince would edit the scene to be less obvious. Is that too specific of a reference for your audience?
My audience is very smart. Hey guys, what's the answer to 2 + 2? Let me know in the comments. Do not disappoint me.
So anyway, this tale graced the world in 2008 for the PC, and nowhere else, like ever, and it probably never will at this point. We have a 3D platformer developed for the PC in the early 2000s, and I cannot lie, it's so computer lab core. The kind of game when I was a kid in the 2000s, would only ever see in settings like a computer lab due to not really playing PC games like that until the very early 2010s. And I don't know, there's like a very specific vibe to games like this. I get similar vibes from games like the PC version of Philosopher's Stone, or even more prestige games like American McGee's Alice.
This game's very existence is just absolutely bizarre. It's a pseudo sequel to a 90s platformer that didn't even sell well, and just look at it. Dove's description is just about perfect. It almost looks like a student project. Now, I lied to you guys earlier. I know everyone loves an unreliable narrator, but Nikita wasn't Techland's first game. Far from it, actually. Before this game, they released Call of Juarez back in 2006. And I don't even think I need to even describe the difference in objective quality here. There's barely any info out there about how Nikita even came about. If I had to guess, it feels like this game was modified from Monolith's Claw 3D beta in some way, and then finished up and dumped upon the world on a shoestring budget. These certainly aren't 2008 graphics, and a game still utilizing tank controls at this point in history is f***ing nuts. Though I will be fair, they're far from the worst I've ever had to use in a platformer. I'll take this over something like Rascal any day. Maybe it was a passion side project for these guys, which I highly respect, but it definitely resulted in a questionable but interesting experience.
That's definitely something I get from this game too. It's very clumsy in the execution of, well, everything it tries to do. But you can tell this game was a genuine effort on the part of the people over at Techland. I assume part of that comes from what was probably the team's love of Claw and a desire to make something at least halfway decent to represent it. I imagine if this had stayed Claw 3D, it probably still wouldn't compare to the original, but the shortcomings like poor world building and an almost non-existent story may not have been as badly done as they are in Nikita itself. Funny thing, but early photos of the game from back when it was a Claw 3D title had a radically different looking version of the swashbuckling feline, at least compared to how he appeared in game. But it was pretty on model if you looked at Claw's Polish cover art.
Kapitan Bezur.
Which is probably what they were basing the design off of, because Techland themselves are Polish.
Something that made Claw so great is how Monolith put a lot of time and effort into Claw's world and characters, but I'm sad to say things didn't work out so well in the product Techland ended up putting out. But at least I can say that somebody at the team really did cook with Nikita's design. She's real cute, and no bias, but I think we need more Fox Girl reps in video games.
Honestly, I gotta agree that Nikita's design is super cute, even in spite of the game itself not looking the best. If she had a better character model, I could honestly see this design as like a major character in the pirate portion of Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, otherwise known as the last Sly game.
Oh, Please don't tell Dove that I liked Thieves in Time when it came out. Oh wait, she can hear everything I'm saying. Oh no.
Yes, I can hear everything you're saying, you Philistine.
Well, to be fair, I haven't played it since it came out over a decade ago, so maybe I'll hate it next time. Yeah. Anyway, so back to Nikita. This game has what can only be described as a pathetic attempt at a story. We get a little intro animatic in which Nikita's father?
Could be her brother. We don't know because the game never communicated anything about who he was and he disappeared after the opening. It's like if Has-Been Hotel had Lucifer show up only once and also never clarified who he even was to Charlie. Going off his design alone wouldn't help, and if all we got was one scene of him trying to warn her about heaven, then that wouldn't really be enough to communicate his role as her father to the audience. That's literally what Nikita does with this guy, who might be her father, but also might not be her father. All we know is he's got this one scene with her right at the start, and then poof, we never hear from or about him again. Nikita never even mentions him again. If you skip this cutscene, he might as well not exist. It's madness, honestly. I'm sorry, were you saying something?
And there you have it, folks. The first and probably only time Has-Been Hotel will ever be brought up on this channel. For a game that features fully voice-acted dialogue and written monologue, it's an accomplishment that every character has zero personality traits or moments of note. The story is quite literally nothing. We're sent out to recover a treasure. We do that. The end. Nikita's mystery relative does tell her that she will need to invade islands inhabited by natives. And the designs of these guys are really rough. This element of the game was aged like spoiled milk even back in 2008. It feels really fucking weird wiping out these civilizations just because there's some gold, but I suppose that's unfortunately pretty accurate to humanity's past. Nikita, you're hot and all. You make the lesbian in me go crazy even if your in-game model looks like complete ass. But that just doesn't excuse wiping out native populations for cash, I'm sorry.
Nikita's apparent love for role-playing as Eren Yeager during the rumbling aside, although that is still very bad. The design of most characters in the game, at least characters that aren't Nikita, kinda suck. Most of the enemies that aren't yikes are generic as fuck, and them repeating and recoloring the same 3 or 4 models doesn't help either. The main villain has these big Bara tigers that have like an alright design on its own, but when it's repeated and recolored over and over again, it just sort of sucks and it takes away any of the life that design could have had. Like, usually games try to have a decent variety of enemy types so this problem doesn't get noticed. I'm not even saying don't repeat enemies, and nor am I saying that every enemy should be unique. That's a ridiculous notion. But what I am saying is that it would help to have a few more different enemy types to mix it up so that the repeating wasn't as obvious. For a good while playing, I thought that the orange Bara tiger in the red top from the racing games cover would be like a named character or maybe even the main antagonist, but he's just a dime a dozen goon that you beat up.
One huge plus in the game's favor is that despite giving me that tank controls jump scare, it plays way better than you'd ever expect just looking at it. That's not to say that it plays great or even good, but it's perfectly playable. Unlike Claw, Nikita doesn't have controller support, which is a damn shame for a platformer game, but it's not too bad if you rebind the keys for all her moves in the options. And that's because I can only describe the default keyboard binding as diabolical. Not only does it commit the sin of mapping basic movement to the arrow keys, but all of your attacks and jumping are bound to keys H, J, K, and L. What the fuck kind of Atari Jaguar nonsense is this? But otherwise, throughout most of the game, moving Nikita around, platforming through levels, and jumping on bad guys is bizarrely satisfying, which is more than I can say for a lot of other games of dubious quality.
I am very much a tank controls defender. I feel often they work well for most games that they're in, as games with them are usually designed with them in mind. I could not imagine playing a classic Resident Evil with anything but tank controls. That all said, they aren't typically great when implemented into 3D platformers specifically. Nikita makes it work once you rebind all the keys because moving with arrow keys is, as Billy Butcher says, diabolical. Can I say fuck on your show, or is that not allowed?
You sure fucking can.
Let's fucking go. I actually forgot the default button placements after a good while playing with my custom inputs, but I remember hating the default button inputs when I started the game. And also, I can't imagine that the default setup was ever comfortable for anyone involved, even back when this game was new. Wait a minute. Roll back. Let's go back a little. Have you ever, like, actually used an Atari Jaguar controller before?
I held one at Melody No Surname's house, and I could just tell that thing was a nightmare. I can't even imagine playing the entirety of Rayman 1 on this thing. That game's hard enough as it is. Graphically, this game isn't a looker. It looks straight out of the late 90s, and the only modern graphical feature I can even spot from the time is horrendously bright bloom that will make even the strongest of eyes go blind in seconds. It's just way too much, and I bet it was dialed up to 11 in a cheap attempt to make the game look better.
I honestly wish you could turn bloom off. It looked way better without it, honestly. This has that early 360 era licensed game vibe to it, where games had obnoxious HD effects thrown onto what were obviously just 6th gen looking games. Like, you know how a lot of games let you turn off motion blur and bloom nowadays? I'm out here wishing Nikita had that feature, since it would look way less like my screen is covered in lube if I could do that.
Sorry, Dove. I think that the lubeless version of this game might be lost media forever. Nikita is a largely very linear platformer featuring lots of decent platforming and basic-ass enemies. There's lots of jumping on crabs or even the heads of the humanoid bad guys, or you can attack with your sword, which works fine enough, usually, but we'll get more into why the combat blows a little bit later. Funny thing is, I played so much Claw growing up where you actually have to use your sword and projectiles to murder your enemies, so I personally didn't do a lot of jumping on enemies' heads like I'm a friendly, portly Italian plumber, but I know you sure did during your playthrough, right, Dove?
Oh yeah, lots of jumping. You see, I find the combat in this game boring and repetitive as it lacks depth in its combat mechanics, which I know might be a silly thing to want from a platformer, but shut up. You have your brainworms and I have mine. The point is, I kept jumping on enemies because I found it really funny. How funny it is to you may depend on what silly shit makes you giggle. I mean, I like Has-Been Hotel after all, so your mileage may vary there comedy-wise. The game actually has like a combo counter for stringing jumps together, but it lacks the sense of reward that something like the combo meters in games like Devil May Cry or Hi-Fi Rush have. It's just like jump on 3 enemies in a row without touching the ground and you get like coins. Like, okay, I'm not Mario. I don't care that much about coins. This doesn't even like help me pay off my student debt.
The combos are hilarious. Baby's first combos, you could say. The devs always position 3 to 5 crabs in a row, and the distance to jump between them is always the same. It's quite silly, but it did give the game a sort of flow that was kind of chill to play, weirdly enough. Unfortunately, there's really just not a lot to say about the game's main levels. Each one is represented on the map during load screens as a separate island, and they're all pretty much your typical platformer fare. Like Claw, you do have projectiles to throw at your enemies, but unlike that game where you could use Claw's different projectile attacks to your strategic advantage, whether you have a bomb or a spear, they all do literally the same thing. And I mean literally the same thing, because even the spears explode on impact. Throwing garbage at enemies is kind of fun, but it's really shallow when you consider that you don't even have to aim at anything, and enemies are always auto-targeted. Sometimes I'd feel like a gamer goddess hitting all these enemies and insta-killing them with my projectiles just to remember that I wasn't even aiming at anything. But it's obvious why they went for this approach, because you can't even use the mouse to move the camera or any sort of reticle at all in this fucking game.
Every single time this game presents some sort of mechanic, it's either very simple with like no real fucking meat on its bones like it's most men in Genshin Impact, or it's something so busted like the throwables that it's literally nothing. It's white noise. Nikita is such a sauceless game when it comes to mechanics. It's like Tales of Arise. It's overall a very simple game, but you can see the start of ideas and concepts that could be built up into something more stable. I find that potential, in Nikita's case anyway, endearing because you can tell they at least wanted to make a good game, or at least a decent game, but it doesn't really live up to any of the potential it sets on the table. It's weird to explain, but I like that there's at least something on the table, but I weirdly feel like most of its potential was fulfilled with Claw. You know, Claw, a game made years prior. You know, that claw.
I just need to talk about Nikita's intro again because it is brilliantly stupid. Because not only does it excuse all of the villager killing, but it also excuses all of the model reuse when it comes to bosses. All but one of the bosses in the entire game are the same rock golem model recolored like 3 times. And the intro states that's because they're the something brothers. Honestly, I already forgot what they're called. And it's explained that they can't be harmed with your sword attack. These bosses instead rely on gimmicks that involve throwing things or luring them into pillars. And that's because the combat sucks. But again, we'll get into why exactly that is soon enough. My favorite part of this game has to be something that was thankfully preserved in the English translated version I saved, because the sauceless generic fake orchestral MIDI soundtrack isn't doing the game any favors, but thank God for the amazing voice acting and poor translation job.
I need to get outside the magic world, and you're the only one who can help me.
I can only host you with high temperature.
Look, I wouldn't be surprised if the folks who had to do all the voices and the translation work's first language wasn't English, so I would never be too harsh on them. In fact, it makes the experience so much funnier. I am never going to forget Nikita proclaiming, "What a fun!" in her written dialogue, or the insanity that is listening to these characters mumble about things you can barely understand.
Stop, Nikita. I have a surprise for you. Penis!
Over the music while they awkwardly run from place to place in a diagonal line during in-game cutscenes.
It's a trap. Dodger's going to destroy the fort.
I can barely even remember how most of the voices sound, but my favorite is Nikita herself. Unlike Claw, she does not give experienced pirate at all.
I'll collect bombs and use the tower cannon to sink ships.
Honestly, she more so gives off airheaded mall girl.
Hot.
You know what? You have a point.
Goddamn rum.
Also, the word you're looking for is valley girl or bimbo, depending on context.
Oh, I know, but I can't get this salty DK Dan clip out of my head, so now I associate any female character who sounds like that with it.
How women play Mario Party. Where is the mall? How men play Mario Party. Where is the mall?
Hold on, Dove, did you also notice that Nikita suddenly just unlocked full 3D control during this dragon, I guess you could say, boss fight, even though you never attack it? I found it so weird that your typical 3D control scheme was programmed into the game for this one short segment, but they decided to stick with tank controls anyway.
This segment threw me the fuck off because of both that and the fact I expected to actually fight a dragon, but nope! Instead, Nikita runs her fat foxy Gyat around in circles, attacking nothing like it's Dark Souls, and then a cutscene pops up and it's like, guess we're done now, huh? Then we get a dragon flying segment we basically don't control that just feels like a way worse version of that carpet escape from the Cave of Wonders after the Genie Jafar boss in KH1, but we don't even get to steer the dragon like we do to carpet. Hey Rennie, you think your audience is tired of me constantly referencing other things yet, or should I keep going?
Oh, please don't stop. If anybody wants to complain about it, they won't be able to resist leaving a comment. And comments equal engagement, which is good for the algorithm. That's just how it works, baby.
Oh, yeah, it's like how in Persona 5 when you—
Haha, so true, Dove. Anyway, that leads us to the final boss. Whew, oh boy. For me, this is where the entire game just fell apart. What a dog shit final boss. You have to fight this ugly little dog freak. Apparently he's the main villain, but you never even get introduced to him until the final level. The first part of this boss requires that you fight him with a cannon. You have to hit him with the cannon a few times first before he'll become vulnerable to regular attacks. Problem being, your cannonballs almost always hit his balls, and half the time, your shots don't even register. Smash that key all you want, you'll never know if the cannon is even going to shoot like you're begging it to. After that fuckfest is over, Nikita's gotta get her booty up to the crow's nest to catch up with the boss. This is when Nikita's very simple sword fighting gameplay completely breaks apart and shows just how terrible it really is. There's already plenty of bullshit to deal with, the boss creepily walking towards you in a straight line unexpectedly, more and more himbo tigers are being spawned in.
They're Baras, actually.
And health pickups don't respawn when you die. That's awesome! Sword fighting has less than no depth to it. So jumping in and swashbuckling like you'd want to, or basically having any fun in the combat is prohibited. If you try to go towards the boss, he will kill you in an instant. The only way to beat this guy with your sword is to wait till he gets close, swing. Wait till he gets close, swing. Repeat the process like a dozen times. You don't even have to move an inch. In fact, it's much better that you don't move at all since the enemies come to you. But it's really unfun, especially for what's supposed to be our climactic final battle. I really wasn't trying to call Dove silly for all the jumping earlier. In fact, I feel stupid for not using that strategy to make my life a million times easier.
The final boss is such a letdown to wrap off the game. Not a letdown in the sense that I expected it to be good or anything, but in the sense that it's the worst part of the game without a doubt. It's like how the final boss of Shinobi on PS2 is easily the worst part of it, but Nikita doesn't have a gorgeous scarf or cool ninja sword skills to make up for it.
Damn, that actually sounds like a really cool drawing idea. Any artists watching, get on that one, please. Nikita deserves so much better than this, genuinely.
Hey, while we're throwing out ideas to people watching, I know of a nice golden boombox Nikita should be introduced to. I mean, this final boss, am I right? What a joke of a climax, right?
Oh, don't you worry, it gets even worse. The boss dies at half health for no explained reason, and Nikita unceremoniously finds the treasure and sails her winnings back to the mall. I mean home, assumedly. After all of that nonsense, I thought we'd at the very least get a basic animatic ending cutscene like the intro one. I think that was a totally fair assumption, but no. Apparently the devs didn't even have the time or budget for that, because we're going back to the trends of the worst shovelware NES games, and we get no proper ending at all. Just a static screen that basically says, "You're winner!" No music, no animation, not even any unique art. Everything is taken from the damn main menu. Nothing, nada, zilch, no reward at all for getting through this thing.
It's like, at least the game's not very long. It only took me like 4 hours to get to the end of it, so it wasn't the worst thing ever. But it was still 4 hours of my time I spent with this foxy lady, and it ended without a proper climax. Get it? Climax? Like a
EA Sports.
Like sex?
Please don't say foxy lady right before those other words. You're gonna make the freakier side of my audience way too excited.
That's the idea.
But yeah, at least the game is mercifully short. Could have been much worse. And at least I can tell it did have some love and care put into it, which is much more than can be said about some really terrible shovelware games out there. If you end up giving it a try, it's mostly okay. It'll go in one big ass fox ear and out the other, you know. I'll give this game a final rating of what a fun. But that leads us to the final attraction of the evening, and the last time we'd ever see our foxy femme fatale of a supposed pirate in a video game ever again, with the spin-off Nikita Speedy Pirates, released assumedly later the same year in 2008. If this poor girl ever got a single W, I suppose it was getting one more game than Captain Claw ever got.
She did not get a W here.
Uh-oh. Now what then? If she doesn't get a win now, all she'll have left is that magnificent ass!
So you remember how I said Nikita showed promise? How underneath all the flaws, shoddy presentation, simple gameplay, awful default controls, poor combat, and potential racism, there was clearly an attempt at a halfway decent 3D platformer underneath all of that gunk? Yeah, well, nothing of the sort for Speedy Pirates. This game instead is a tossed together salad of assets flipped from the last game, mixed with awkward keyboard controls, annoying voice lines that repeat far too much. And then once again, setting movement to the arrow keys by default alongside items that lack any real impact to their presence and nothing of real substance under the hood of this junker of a game. But hey, at least it's still got the racially insensitive caricatures, and now you can play them too!
Good God, not only do we just get 4 characters total to choose from, but they're all ugly as sin. I honestly miss when we didn't have to look at the models so closely.
You can unlock a few more racers by completing tournaments on hard, but like, why would you? Like, honest question here, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but what is my motivation here? I know that's my acting background talking, but it's a genuine question.
I can't even imagine a single soul on this earth wanting to bother with that, unless you're doing it for a joke. Nikita is still the only character with decent design here. All of the others are utter gormless freaks with no personality, so there's literally nothing in these characters to get attached to or enjoy on any level. What I will say is, the game is functional enough as a kart racer. I've played slower, harder to control kart racers because it's a go-to genre for shovelware shite, so the bar is low. Like Dove said, there's so many reused assets. All of the power-ups blow and they're all PNGs of fruit because the devs couldn't think of anything better than that. And my god, the physics are nuts! If you so much as tap another driver or get hit by any projectile, you will go flying! Which, while hilarious the first few times, shockingly enough, does not make for a fun gameplay experience.
It honestly reminds me of Steam Greenlight games from back in the day, the type Stephanie Sterling took cracks at in the past. And like, I don't usually refer to the Never Dead hater as a frame of reference, but come on, you gotta see what I mean here, right?
I always wanted to try Never Dead. Well, yeah, I can totally see what you're saying, 100%. It's garbage, for sure. The only reason I don't see it as bottom of the barrel is because I've played kart racers even worse than this. I've played Action Girls Racing for Wii, so I know what true hell is.
Why have you played Action Girls Racing? Exactly? Are you okay?
I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. I swear I'm fine. I swear I'm fine. I swear I'm fine. I swear I'm fine.
FK in the coffee.
Oh, thank goodness. Finally a reference I understand. Deadly Premonition is a classic, and everyone should play it, Zach.
Deadly Premonition. That's the reference you get out of all the ones I make? Honestly, I shouldn't even be shocked.
Okay. I was exaggerating somewhat. I was just really excited about that one.
You hear that, Zach?
So we're sad to report that the Furry Pirate Trilogy ended with a stinky whimper rather than anything actually worth playing. It's really cool that the game's preserved in a playable English translated state now, but it doesn't exactly surprise me that folks forgot about Nikita in the first place.
There's potential here, no doubt, but everything here is done better elsewhere, honestly. Also, since I didn't mention it anywhere else, isn't it kinda weird Nikita's design isn't consistent across any of her games? Like, her top's black in both games, but it's blue on the cover of the racing game and red on the cover of the first game. Like, what is up with that? All we need now is a pink and green variant and we'd have a Furry Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. You know, like the Pirate Sentai? Your audience knows what Sentai is, right?
Huh. Yeah, that is weird. I think how much we're talking about Nikita's design goes to show that her games are best experienced in the realm of furry art rather than video game software.
Is there a reason you changed shirts just now?
What do you mean? My top's always been red.
Ah!
So that's Claw and Nikita. Claw is totally worth playing. Please go do that now. It's free, it plays great, and it holds up so well. Nikita, I'm sure you could see, not so much. Play at your own risk. But I just found all of these games really fascinating considering the developer's history, and the fact that Nikita even exists at all is baffling to say the least. Plus, it's more hot furry pirates you can use in your fan art. Hell, can somebody please give Nikita a personality? You got this, artists and writers. I believe in you.
I think it'd be really cool if people drew her making out furiously with Carmelita Fox. You know, I just think that'd be really neat.
I totally agree. And no particular reason, but I think they should add Crystal to that art too. That would be cool.
You know, Rennie, this was fun, honestly. Like, a lot of fun. If you ever want to come on my show, I think the rest of the castle's residents would love to have you. Just don't go in the basement.
Oh, what's in the basement?
Calvin's dad.
Huh, that doesn't sound that crazy. It doesn't sound like anything I couldn't handle.
Well, I had to learn later on after I started living there, but Calvin's dad is Cthulhu. For some reason, Mistress just doesn't lead with that when she tells people not to go down there, so I have to warn them instead. Why do you suddenly look very scared?
No reason. Unspeakable horrors beyond mankind's imagination don't scare me, but I'll pass on the basement anyway. I'll respect that request. But yeah, I'd love to visit your place sometime, and thank you for making your way here. I had such a great time covering these funny furry games with you today. I really appreciate you coming all this way to my, I don't know, I don't have lore. Maybe I'm in New Zealand considering all the Kiwis.
It's no problem at all. I'm glad I came onto the show famous for taking Hollywood seriously. It was such a fun experience, honestly.
Well, I give this experience an A+. Be sure to check out Dove's channel. She makes awesome content. Her link will be in the description and all that jazz.
I hope to see you all there. And remember, may your heart be your guiding key.
I got that reference too. Maybe I'm not so uncultured after all. But I don't have a quirky video ending phrase of my own though, so...
Jockey de galinha, jockey de galinha, jockey de galinha, jockey de galinha. Jockey de galinha.